Good afternoon, everyone. This is meeting number 35 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Thursday, November 24th, 2016. And I will remind all the committee members, as well as those in the audience, that today we are televised, and I would encourage you to mute your phones or to shut them off. Today we're conducting a review of the plan of the Department of National Defence to record and value inventory. Appearing before us from the committee, from the Department of National Defence, we have Mr. John Forster, Deputy Minister, Mr. Patrick Finn, Assistant Deputy Minister, Material, and Claude Rochette, Assistant Deputy Minister, Finance and Chief Financial Officer. We will begin with the Auditor. We will begin with Mr. Forster's comments. And I invite the Deputy Minister now to bring those comments forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have prepared some remarks which I think the committee has, but I know you'd like to leave as much time as possible for questions, so perhaps I could leave them with the committee members to read through, and I'll just make a few brief opening remarks. First, Mr. Chair, we understand the importance of this issue. We know we are 86% of the Government of Canada's inventory, some $7 billion, and what we do has a significant impact on government's public accounts. And we know it's an important issue, and we're committed to succeeding. Second, we have made some progress, and I think both the Comptroller General and the Auditor General have acknowledged that. However, we know we still have a significant amount of work left to do, and we're managing this as an important priority for the department. You know, I think a key milestone for us was developing an integrated and automated system. Previously, our inventory information was disaggregated, decentralized. The engineering information was in one place, the financial information in another, the purchasing information in another. And a key thing for us to really break the back of how we're going to improve our inventory was to bring this all together in an integrated system, which will give us real-time information, and we're starting to do that. I guess the third thing I would just say is this is a very large and complex problem. Believe me, if it was easy, we would like to be finished. We have 640 million items in our inventory and over 450,000 different codes. If you can read those remarks, I'm just going to do some very brief opening things and then go on. You know, ammunition alone, we have over 5,000 different items, and they're stored in warehouses and bases across the country and around the world. Some of the inventory goes back decades and predates the government's starting to value this and put it on its accounts, and sometimes that's a challenge to put a value on it. Sometimes we're asked, you know, how hard can it be? Why can't you be like Canadian Tire? That's true to some extent. I asked the same question when I first arrived. But there are some key differences. First, most businesses acquire inventory to use it, sell it, and replenish it. So they're always able to update the value of their items. In defense, it's a bit different. We actually often acquire inventory and hold it to ensure that we have inventory and parts in time for readiness, for emergencies, and sometimes because we need to make sure we have a stockpile for older equipment where it may be hard to get parts anymore. We take items out of our inventory to repair it, to fix it, to use it, and then we put them back in. And sometimes it's just hard to put a value and a number on it. For example, we bought a large bulk of parts for the submarines from the United Kingdom. So we paid a bulk price for that, and then now we've got to go through as we enter these in our inventory and put a price on each one of those, even though we kind of bought it as an aggregate. These aren't intended in any way as excuses. It's just our reality. Our inventory is large, it's spread out close to our operations, and it involves tens of thousands of people who are either purchasing, stocking, or using those items that put in our inventory information. So as I said, I think we've made some progress. We have a lot of work to do. We sent the committee a report with a proposal with a six-point action plan. Just quickly, one on those 6 action plans is governance. So we are making this a priority for the department. Our associate deputy and vice chief through a defense renewal committee oversee it. Our senior leadership have it on their agenda, and a directive from the deputy and the chief have gone out on this. Second, we do want to implement an automated identification technology. That's kind of barcodes and radio frequency identification. We're doing the options analysis. This will be a big change and a big project, and we'll have to look at how fast we can do it and what we can afford. Third, we're changing the accountability for our senior managers on this. They have to sign attestations each year that they're following our processes, and we do an annual stock taking. So far, we try and work our way through it. So far to date, we've done about $4 billion worth of our inventory, and we'll do another $1 billion this year to recount. Fourth, we're trying to modernize our inventory management. We're removing obsolete items, outdated items, and we go through some of that every year to get out-of-date codes and stock and write it down. It's kind of like cleaning out your attic, and we're trying to get through that each year, some part of it. Fifth, we're reviewing how we price and value our inventory, and we want to make sure going forward we've got the right prices in, and we still have to deal with some of the original legacy prices that were in there. So that's the sixth element. Our system now looks for anomalies in how we've priced items in our inventory, so we can change them, fix them. For example, we had 20,000 detonators that were purchased for $158 each. But in our system, they were recorded as 20,000 detonators for $158. So when you find that, that's a $3 million undervaluation. That on its own is large enough, but when the Auditor General does his audit, if they sample that item, they then extrapolate that to the entire, and you get a very large effect on the public accounts. So that's why we're going back as quickly as we can to look at our legacy pricing for items that may be 10, 20 years old that predated when the government started to value this. So, Mr. Chair, that will conclude just some opening comments. I think we know we've made some good progress. We know we have a heck of a lot of work still left to do. And both my colleagues and I look forward to your questions this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Minister and Mr. Forster. I think, I appreciate your comments, but I think we need to make very clear here that you've been invited back to our Public Accounts Committee. We've had the department here earlier. In 2013, again, you released a report. Part of that report said that you were going to follow certain guidelines, certain dates. You had the dates there. And then you said that to ensure the proper stewardship of public resources, it was important that you follow the plan. Then this year, some of those dates got completely changed around. Some of the guidelines that said you would be accomplishing this in 2016-17 became 2026-27. And I guess that's the reason why we want you, our role as a committee is to hold departments to account after the Auditor General has filed a report, and when you come and say that you're going to accomplish this in this timeline and then almost unilaterally change the timelines after you've appeared, that's why we're inviting you back. So I'll turn it to Madam Mendez to begin, but I just want to lay out some of the concerns that the committee as a whole have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and actually to follow up on your introduction to the issue, what is very worrying for us is that, yes, we went from an action plan that gave us some dates for 2016-17, and now we're 10 years later. And we'd like to know why this big change, and what is considered a step and what will be considered the final or the end point of this process of improvement and change in the department?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think we have one item in the action plan that is pushed out to 2627, and it is a long time frame. And that's the automation technology. So that's the barcoding, the radio technology chips. It requires changes to our IT systems. It's going to require Wi-Fi in all of our warehouses and bases. Clearly, it is a transformative change, and it will be a big change. So we're doing the options analysis work on that now. As we look at it, the cost of it could be quite expensive. So we're trying to break it down and scale it as best we can. I think what we've given you is the end date. That I think there will be, doesn't mean that nothing will happen for 10 years, but the cost of it, some of the early cost estimates could be over $1 billion. So it's something that is a big item for us that we're going through the options analysis, and we hope to finish that work and have a way that we can kind of phase it in and manage it to get that one piece of the 6 done. On the other elements in our action plan, we are making progress now. As I mentioned, every year we're doing stock taking to correct. Every year we're going through legacy items to correct pricing. And with the change in the integrated system now, where we have inventory, purchasing, engineering, and financial information all integrated, that's what's starting to give us a real picture of the inventory. So we're not, I don't think we're trying to make progress on all fronts. The one item that will be longer than I think expected is this technology piece, just because it's large and quite expensive.
I agree that it will take a certain amount of time to get that one correct, but there are other elements in the action plan that have been extended, and our questions as a committee was why? What were the reasons that needed this extension in timelines, and is this just because you didn't foresee certain problems? Is this because some things are more difficult to achieve? For us, it's important to actually know it and be aware of it, and that's why we invited you back.
Okay. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Finn. He can provide some more detail on each of the elements and where we're at.
Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you very much for the question.
I oversee all the aspects of the inventory from location and value, etc. One of the things we're trying to do with this plan, I'm going to call it a kind of a cultural change as well. I've been in the department 38 years, 36 years in uniform, and have been involved with this for most of my career. As a junior officer, when we were a larger military, we had more people who were heavily involved with inventory and stock taking and those sort of things. And in the mid-90s, we sort of got out of that game. And what we've actually been spending our time doing is not just try to fix today's problem and looking at, can we localize it all? Can we count it all? Can we put a value on it all? To some extent we can, but it's a very large undertaking. Our fear is if we just stop and try to do that, that the problems will reappear. And every time we do a data entry of a new stock code, of a new system that we get, we risk recreating the same problems that we've had. And so when we really started down this path of improvement, and we had a previous plan, I would say it's proven to be optimistic. A big piece, we've talked about these 3 big systems, all of which are enterprise systems, but there were many more than that. Frequently what happened is every fleet that we got came with its own inventory system that was a mirror of what the original equipment manufacturer would provide to us. So for us, bringing all this into one system, and in fact, we brought it together and we've dealt with all of the kind of the legacy issues and problems with that. We only landed that in 2015. So since 2015, we've now had one system that does the financial aspects, the procurement aspects, the inventory aspects of it. We now have, frankly, what some of my colleagues have called a richness of data. We have, in fact, almost kind of more data that we can handle. And so for us, it's really changing the culture at the same time to make sure that we're not back here in 3 or 4 years, that we've kind of cracked it, we've looked at it, we've valued it all, but it's gotten away from us again. So in some of the automated technology we're looking at, but even within the systems we have, to bring in some algorithms, some procedures, some things that we can do to kind of find the issues. So the deputy gave an example of, it wasn't the dollar amount or the number, but it was the units that were inappropriately. We've had situations where a lot of bullets were acquired and the unit cost of the bullet was put against the whole lot as somebody's entered it. We have tens of thousands of people who interact with this, and getting them all, sufficiently aware and trained to make sure that we understand it. What I'm heartened to see is, all of my colleagues at the level 1, so the commander of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Special Forces, are also all personally engaged in this to understand that we've got to get back the culture of understanding what we have and where it is and what state it's in, not just for the purposes of public accounts, but also for operational reasons. If we don't understand our inventory, it affects us operationally, and it actually triggers, overbuys and excess buys. So something we're trying to do, and we've made some pretty important progress to the tune of tens of millions of dollars annually in savings, is to actually kind of deal with those as well. So, we recognize that we've got more to do here, but what we're trying to do is transform the organization around inventory management as we do it.
You allow me my seconds left?
No, your seconds are up. Sorry, we'll come back to you though, Madam Mendez. Thank you very much for the answer. We'll now move to Mr. McColman, please, for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. When I look at the timelines that were given and then the timelines that were restated, all of them are extended out. You mentioned the 2020 to 26 to 27 in the earlier comment, but if you look at all of the categories, the initiatives, they're all bumped up, some to 2020, some to 2019. So I make that comment, and when I was reviewing the materials prior to this meeting, frankly, it really struck me as gobbledygook in terms of what was trying to be said. I'll read you a section, and this is your response to the governance. And while defense is, I'll quote, while defense has implemented robust governance, this governance has been managed by functional authorities. Moving forward and beginning in 2016-17, National Defense will reinforce its existing inventory management governance by ensuring more consistent senior leadership visibility, accountability, and direction using the existing departmental corporate governance structure. This will facilitate senior leadership oversight and reporting on inventory management improvements at National Defense. Now, what does that really mean? Like, I'm going to be quite blunt about this. This seems like, to me, a dog's breakfast that you're trying to explain to us, the people who are supposed to be holding the organization to account, and you're telling us things like functional authority. What is that a euphemism for? Because that suggests there is dysfunctional authority somewhere. Could you answer that for me, please? What does that term mean? Functional authority.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Functional authority usually means that you have one of your senior leadership that's responsible for an area but doesn't have necessarily direct accountability for it. So Pat, for example, would be a functional authority about inventory material management. But at the same time, some of that work is being done by people in the Army who report to a base commander. So defense in itself is a bit of a matrixed organization because we have both a civilian workforce and a military workforce. I don't disagree with you that perhaps that wording isn't as clear as it could be. I think what we're trying to get across here in terms of governance is we have first of all, we have...
I'm going to stop you
sorry.
there.
Yep.
You answered my question. I got another question. I've got limited time, sir. Can you quantify in what ways this quote, consistent senior leadership visibility, accountability, direction, has been ensured thus far? Can you quantify the ways? Because, again, the words would suggest there's something inconsistent not very visible, and not very accountable.
No, I think it gets back to my earlier comment that inventory originally was very disaggregated, decentralized in the department. So you have base commanders that will play a role in that inventory. We have parts and warehouses across the country and around the world. All of those people are buying and entering information into an inventory system. So it's not like we have one room with 25 people and that's all they do is inventory. So I'll have a base commander, he'll be buying supplies, he'll be entering that information into an inventory system. What we've tried to do is, one, through a committee that's co-chaired by my associate and the vice chief, put this on their agenda to have regular monitoring. We've issued a directive from the Chief of Defense and the Deputy to all of the senior executive that makes this much more clear in their accountabilities. Every year they have to attest, so the senior leadership, that they have followed the procedures and policies about inventory and how we record material in that system. So that we're trying to make sure going forward the information going in is accurate and complete, and we're trying to work to clean up a legacy.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
You perhaps were handed the dog's breakfast, but the reality is, this looks like a system. I come from business. I know inventory management. I've seen it happen in fairly large companies. This looks like chaos to me. It sounds like, from what was Mr. Finn described, that when procurement happens, you do not specify the exact type of inventory management system you need for the additional parts that you're buying, that they're all different. That's what your comment suggested to me. So in other words, you're trying to, you're always trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And it's actually, I'm just new to this committee, but frankly, from where I come from 25 years of my own business, it just blows me away how dysfunctional and how this looks to me to be a system in chaos. Can you react to my perceptions?
Thank you for the comments. A system in chaos, did we wind up there, particularly in the context of, I'll say, some of the valuation of inventory, perhaps? When I was talking about all the procurements, we have inventory that goes back, that's 50 years old, that is still inventory that we need and use. And very different than a business where, yes, the inventory is about the bottom line, the profits, and as I often say to colleagues who talk about, going to a store and how stores may do it, if I walk into a large retailer and they don't have inventory, they give me a rain check that allows me to come back later, perhaps. For military operations, the inventory has to be there. We have decades of inventory that have come in different times. To your point about, do we now specify the format we do? In fact, part of the evolution of our enterprise system is we've gone now to an electronic information exchange. But we are dealing in some cases with large multinational corporations who have customers all over the world who don't always want to kind of bend to our standards. But we work at that now. So as we go forward, this is part of what we've done to, in fact, improve and why it's taken us some time. As we've merged this one enterprise system, we've actually included a means by which we now do automatic exchange. But going back to equipment that we acquired 50 years ago, in some cases we're disposing of it, frankly, that didn't come with that kind of area. It's not an inventory we've just disposed of. In some cases, we're moving through the disposal of it. But a lot of our inventory is also subject to control goods. We've acquired it under international agreements. In the case of the U.S., under international trade agreements and arms regulation. That means that we have to be very careful about who sees it, what it's exposed to. Some of our inventory is classified. So there's a complexity to what we do that in my experience, is not like the private sector, although we are cooperating internationally and with the private sector for best practices.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. We'll now move to Mr. Christofferson. Mr. Christofferson, and you have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for being here today. I'd like to say right off the top, I just returned from a NATO Parliamentary Assembly meeting in Istanbul, Turkey, 2 days ago. And what I would like to do is to reflect back to you the respect that our allies have for the presence and the professionalism of the Canadian contribution to our common defense. Today, I think we're underscoring the fact that fiscal accountability is part of that professionalism, but make no mistake that that professionalism is recognized on the world stage, and it was proud to be a Canadian and see the Canadian presence there working with our allies on our common defense. Now, having said that, I want to echo the chair's comments and make it crystal clear that this is not just a regular meeting, nor is this just a regular public discussion, and it's not just a regular call back. You are being called back on the carpet because this issue has been going on now for at least 13 years, 12 of which I've been here for. So I know this issue. And I was here in 2012 when we got your first plan. And as colleagues have said, one of our problems and one of the reasons you're being called back on the carpet is that the plan that you gave us in 2013 is different than the plan you gave us in 2016. Now, you may appreciate that historically, one of the goals of ministries when they're called in for a hearing is one and done. If you can get in here and get through the meeting, you're safe, because the committee really doesn't have the means or the ability to follow up on all the details and all the promises. So if you can just get through that meeting, you're good. Those days are over and have been for a while now, based on the inquest that made the Gomery inquest, which was it was this committee that uncovered the sponsorship scandal, and one of the recommendations from Justice Gomery was that we increase our analytical abilities and our research abilities. So we have more analysts than most people do on most committees, so that we can follow these kinds of things. So those days of one and done are over. But I want you to know that we take this very seriously. Now, I want to get to the crux of the matter. First of all, I want to point out that the figure 1 that you included, the chart. I'm sure you've got copies of the chart you sent us in 2013. What's interesting is the words at the top of the chart are exactly verbatim the same. So it says, key milestones and deadlines of the Department of National Defense's 2013 plan to record and value its inventory. Exactly the same words at the top of the chart in 2016. But what's interesting and problematic is that it doesn't even use the same words after that. So one could make the argument that it was meant to be a con job, which is why my friend was asking about the details of what you're saying. It's tough enough to understand what some of this stuff means. But when we get a second report under the same heading using a new set of gobbledygook with longer deadlines, then it's easy, and you'll respect, I'm sure, that we could conclude that you came in here with that first plan and it was one and done. There they go, they got a plan, we put some stuff in there, and that's that. Oh, suddenly they asked us for another one in 2016. Well, we can't send the same thing. That wouldn't look very good. So they make up something new. And this is our problem right now, or at least I'll own my own words. This is my problem right now, is that either it was deliberate, which is a huge problem, or you really didn't have a handle on it and you threw something together to get you through. And that's not acceptable either. So, what's the explanation, gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you for your comments regarding NATO and the respect they have for the Canadian forces. I think that's very much appreciated, and I agree with you. Canada is very well respected in NATO. Let me just start off by getting to the heart of your questions. First of all, I don't consider this a one and done. I'm happy to come back here and report to the committee on our progress on this issue. I wasn't here in 2012 when that first plan was done. I am here when this one was resubmitted. I'm happy to appear before this committee as often as you would like for me to update you on that. If you're finding our report back to you a bit difficult to understand, that's not our intent. I'm quite happy to clarify anything in here, provide an updated one that you feel is easier to get a picture of what's going on. I'm happy to provide you with milestones. I'm happy to report on those milestones and come back to you as often as you'd like to have us. So I don't see this as a one and done. If I can get from here to 5:30, I'm pretty much home free for another 4 years. That's not how I do my business or take my job. We totally acknowledge this is an important issue.
To the answer, we're running out of time.
My apologies, sir. The plan we've put in, I think we have made progress since the last plan. I talked about it somewhat at the beginning in terms of going back, putting in the system first of all, because that's what was needed to help us break the back of it.
That in 2012? You didn't know you needed that system, and if you needed it, why didn't you tell us that?
It was part of the original plan, as I recall.
So it's only the time frame that changed?
I would believe so, sir.
Then explain to me why the time changed in such a short period of time. 3 years, it's not that long.
Well,
why did it change?
I can't answer that for you, but I'm happy to get you the question.
Sorry, sir, that's not good enough. You coming in here, we've dealt with this before. I've been around a long time.
Yes, sir.
We've dealt this before. Bringing in a new deputy that says, I wasn't there, so I'm not responsible, that's not going to cut it, sir. The ministry gave this committee, the Premier Oversight Committee of Parliament, a chart of how they were going to do things and when they were going to do it. When we asked for a follow-up chart 3 years, 4 years later, it was different. You're not giving me an answer as to why it was different.
Well, sir, first of all,
Mr. Forster.
I am responsible for it, even though it was my predecessor. And I wasn't here at the time. And I take that responsibility seriously. And I'm the deputy now, and it is my responsibility, and it's my accountability. So if you would like an explanation on any matter of where we are now versus where we said we were in 2012, I'll be happy to get back to the...
I'm waiting. With great respect, sir, I'm waiting.
I'll be happy to provide that back to the committee on every item we had in the 2012 plan.
Well, start talking to me now. We'll get a detailed report from you and haul you back again if we need to, but tell me now, give me some obvious reasons why you weren't playing us for fools.
Okay, I'm as much as I'm interested in your answer, we're a minute
That's
over,
fair, sir.
so I can't keep doing that. We'll now move back to Mr. Chen, please. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm relatively new to Parliament, to this committee, but I am quite shocked at what I am reading and what I am seeing in this report. This is like walking onto a field of landmines. And like the subject at hand, we have no idea where they are lodged, how many there are, whether they are obsolete or not, or active. And I would like to know, and I want to thank our guests for being here, first of all. I would like to know, in terms of the various strategic initiatives and projects that are articulated here by the department, I'd like to get a better sense of the cohesiveness, because on the one hand, you've got, for example, the automatic identification technology initiative, which, based on my understanding, is looking at the department's inventory. And you've articulated that it's quite challenging. You've got 640 million different items, 445,000 different stock codes. And within all this inventory, there are everything from bullets to boots to jumpsuits, jet fuels, and you've mentioned today that there are 5,000 different types of ammunition, for example. So on the one hand, you're trying to get a handle of what the inventory is, how old it is, whether it's priced properly. And on the other hand, you've gotten another initiative that appears to be simultaneously happening, the Inventory Management Modernization and Rationalization Project, and that, based on your report that I read, looks to dispose of items that are no longer needed. So can you explain to me, how are you simultaneously not having an understanding of what you have and then at the same time be able to start disposing of items? How does that connect?
Me too.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the question. What we're trying to do here overall, and you talked about the inventory is to make sure we have an understanding of our inventory overall. So the location of it, the quantity of it, the state of it, and ultimately the price of it from a valuation perspective. The latter being key to the public accounts, obviously, and also key in the context of replacement inventory. But I'll say the first three being particularly important in the context of military operations. What inventory do we have? How much? Where is it? And so all of these activities that we've talked about in total are all meant to come together and to rationalize the entire inventory in all the ways we've talked about. So they're different activities because there's different aspects of it. So how we do stock taking, where is it? As we do stock taking and we go back into the hundreds of warehouses we have, and we literally have inventory all over the country and around the world. Every ship at sea has inventory in it. It gets drawn locally, so a technician goes into the bowels of the ship, draws inventory, months later comes back alongside, puts in a request to replenish things. So what we're trying to do is to rationalize what we all have. As we go through it, as we stock take it, we identify things. In some cases, we have inventory that has sat on the shelf for 50 years unopened. Do we still need it? Is it a propeller for a ship that's 30 years old? I hope to never use the propeller, but if we have a ship run aground, we have to have access to it to use it. And that's where I talk about, for us, inventory is quite different than the private sector. But all of these activities, so what do we have? The stock taking, the disposal of it, the making sure that we're changing our processes so we're not overbuying inventory, the accountability that the deputy talked about. So kind of raising this up so that our level ones, the commander of the Army, Navy, Air Force, as I indicated, understand that this is part of their key accountability, getting back to that place. So all of these are subsets of a plan that we are doing and operating in a cohesive fashion, trying to bring all that together under the governance so that we ultimately can come before you and say, yes, we've got a handle on all of our inventory, where it is, how much of it there is, what state it's in, and value it. And it's a very, very large undertaking, given that we're talking about going back decades in some cases to look at valuation of some of the inventory we hold.
So it sounds to me like you have legacy processes right now that is looking at understanding what the inventory is, because again, I'm trying to connect the dots here. You're looking at analyzing the options for your automatic identification technology by 2020. Yet at the same time, you've gotten key milestones to dispose 200,000 material items that are not needed by 2016. Another 500,000 items that you will plan to dispose by 2017. So it seems to me like there's overlapping processes here.
Yeah, thank you again for the question. When we talk about the automated identification technology, we have some of that technology today. We have high-value items that are barcoded. We use hand scanners. The point is that using, as you indicated, some of our processes are dated. We're renewing all of our processes. We're doing a lot of work. We're using the technology we have. We're increasing stock taking, which means we have people going out into the fields, visiting bases, visiting warehouses, doing hand counts, using barcodes, doing those sort of things, so that we can identify what to dispose and take the actions that you've stated. But we also realize that if we don't go further in modernizing this, the potential is going to be to come right back to this. So what we're looking at around the world with our NATO allies, with other allies, with business, is what is the state-of-the-art technology, so radio frequency identification, things of that nature, such that we can have instantaneous knowledge of the location of a lot of our inventory, particularly high-value items. So what we're trying to do at the same time as we're doing the cleanup, very specifically in this automated identification technology, we're looking at how can we improve our processes, how can we automate more of our inventory processes to come into best practices, such that as we roll forward through the next decade, not only have we cleaned it all up, not only are we capable of coming on public accounts and the OEG and the Controller General and answer the questions, but we can actually do it in a more efficient manner. We have a large undertaking under defense renewal where we're looking at inventory, as I've mentioned, the overbuys, the things we're trying to avoid, but also to do these other steps such that, missiles, torpedoes, high-end things are very closely tracked And so it's really two parts. How do we clean up, but how do we go forward to improve our practices and improve how we manage inventory?
Merci, Mr. Chen. We're out of time. Monsieur Gaudin, le deuxième round, 5 minutes.
Mr. Godin, second round, 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, what I'm hearing today, I'm scandalized by it, honestly. I'll tell you, quite frankly, that's how I feel today. I find that people are going to make a joke of this. They're laughing at us. They're laughing at Canadians. You've just stated, Mr. Finn, that our aim is that in the next 10 years this be effective. How can we believe you? Because today you tabled a plan for 2016 with a precise date and an extension, and 2013 and 2016 don't match, and you're just moving everything forward in time. My colleague just said that my colleague to my right said that in private business, people manage their inventory. What comes in, what goes out. Clearly, there is inventory, depending on the size of the business. There's inventory that stays on the shelves, but there's tallying up of it. We're in 2016. With the systems that exist today, I fail to understand how the Department of National Defense is unable to control its inventory. It's very simple. There are 3 types of inventory. Past inventory that can be tallied up with regard to its value. Give it the value that you wish with expert calculations, upwards or downwards. At least that'll give us an indication. There's the present inventory. For value purposes, it's not complicated. The present inventory is the price you've paid for it. Future inventory, how are you going to deal with it? And how are you going to harmonize all of this in the future? Within D&D, is there not a team? Are there not experts you could call upon? If you really plan on finding the solution, you should be able to put in place and use internal talent, in-house talent, to do this work. Now, the will, is it there? That is the question that I'm asking myself. I'm not convinced, or rather I don't sense. I mean, you're full of goodwill. I'm not attacking you personally. We're not judging you personally. But I do not sense that you are putting in place the necessary measures in order to achieve your ends. And once again, what I'm saying here is always the same. The Auditor General makes checks, audits. You've presented table to us, and I'm not convinced that at 5:30 you'll feel relieved, because it's one thing to come here and attend this meeting. If I don't see you, it's a good sign. I don't want to see you here. Infantry taking for the armed forces, if it's well done, we won't see you, and we'll devote our time to something else. Listen, NATO is asking Canada to invest more money at present. How, as parliamentarians, will we be able to vote if we're not even able, in 2016, to control the inventory we now hold? So I'm not very comfortable with this, and I don't feel very safe. How can you give us some security and help Canadians place their trust in you with regard to infantry taking? Because we know that the D&D budget is very important here in Canada. So I think we have to respect Canadian taxpayers who invest in the department through their taxes. So that's a minimum. How can you give us confidence today, reassure us today? I'm having trouble believing you. But we have to give you a chance to reassure us. So how can you reassure us and confirm to us that you'll put in place the necessary measures? Thank you for the question.
Like this. We have 2 issues, I think. One going forward and one dealing with the legacy. So going forward, we want to make sure we have a modern information system that can collect the financial and the inventory information, put it in one place. That's being done. 2, We want to make sure going forward that all of the people buying and entering inventory information into the system are well trained, they have clear policies, they have clear practices, we have the accountability in place that they're to do this and take this seriously. So this is going forward. So that's being done. We want to make sure going forward we're putting in the inventory is clear and correct, and I think even the Auditor General acknowledges in terms of quantity, we've made significant progress, and it's in not too bad shape, still more to do. On quantity, how many of this, how many of that? I think where the Auditor General has signaled a problem is on the value of that inventory. So going forward, what we're trying to do with the technology project, with the information systems, with the accountability, and with the policies and practices for things we're buying now, it's going in and it's relatively clean and accurate. Now we have a legacy problem, because before 2003, nobody worried that much about what the value per se was. We needed to know how many pairs of boots are in the warehouse, how many bullets are in the warehouse. So the systems weren't designed to sort of track the value so that we could report it. So we have an issue of, okay, what do we do with the legacy of material that's there? And that's what we also have, back to Mr. Chen's earlier comment, that's what we have to track. So going forward, let's not create any more let's get good information, not create more problems. And then how do we clean up what's there? Because some of that inventory we still need. It may be 20 years old, but we still need it because we're using that equipment. And so we're trying to do it in a number of ways. One, every year we go in and we do a stock taking on a portion of it. $1 billion every year worth of parts we're doing. We've done $4 billion to date. Two, we're trying to get rid of the old, obsolete material that's in there that we no longer need. And we should get rid of it, and we should take it out of the system. Three, we need to go in and look at how did we put a price on it in 2003. Because some of it would have just been estimated. They may not have had the records of what they bought. And that's the work we're doing on pricing, to go in and say, that thing's only valued at $10, it's actually worth $1,000. So we're trying to track it in two ways. Going forward, systems, technology, policies, accountability, and clean up the legacy. And I think the Auditor General has recognized on quantity, we've done some good work and made some good progress. And yes, we've got to deal with the value and the price we want to put on that material. And we're trying to, it's mostly for the older legacy material, not the newer stuff coming in. And that's the part we're trying to do.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Ms. Shanahan. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to the witnesses for appearing before us today, because I think what really triggered to our questions about how National Defence was managing its inventory was the fact that the Auditor General had signalled this problem for the last 13 years. And I too noticed that there was a thumbs up on the improvements that have been made by the National Defence in regards to quantity, and I think that can't be understated, because we can understand, many of us have had experience with dealing with inventory. I certainly have dealt with clients who have had that issue, and we could appreciate the size of the problem. So I would like to return just to the Auditor General's remarks and just get your comments on the fact that, again, this year, the Auditor General found that National Defence's inventories were overstated by hundreds of millions of dollars. And I just want to understand, where that's coming from. Is that, can we attribute that purely to legacy valuation problems, or is it still a problem with input that you mentioned in your remarks, that people are making mistakes with the input? And that's worrisome, right? Because why isn't somebody checking that? How can an error be made of that magnitude? So on the quantity as well, talk to us a little bit about how the improvements were made on the quantity. Here the Auditor General remark says inventory is counted through a cyclical risk-based approach. So just talk to us a little bit about that. And for me personally, the thing that I get concerned about is when we're not sure where everything is and so on, is what is the risk of loss and, of course, of stolen items. So where do you feel you are in the security of the inventory?
Okay, maybe I'll ask Monsieur Rochette to talk about the Auditor General's work on the financial, and then Pat can speak to you about the quantity and loss parts.
So thank you very much, ma'am, for your question. On the pricing, you're right. We have two problems. The first problem, of course, is legacy, the information that we had before, and we have also a problem. We still have some issues about the pricing of new items coming in. If I may take 2 minutes, just give you a bit, because I've been like the Deputy Minister just arrived in 2015, and I was wondering too, like why it was taking so much time and having problem with our pricing issues. So we have thousands of people, in fact, having an impact on inventories, entering information in the systems. So we have to keep in mind that often, and I've done a bit of a survey, like to look, because Comptroller General, when I deal with them, when they do the audit, they keep referring also to 2003. So I wanted to know what was done and why it took like 13 years later. Now this is where we are. And I was looking at even just to set up the system we referred before about the accrual accounting, started in 2003. So just to have the Ministry of National Defense change our financial system to be able to be based on accrual basis, to be able to do our financial statement was a challenge. When we entered all the information and we combined between 2003 and 2013, was to bring the system, the different financial management system and the material system together. We have done that. Now we have a new system called DREAMIS, Departmental Resource Management Information System, that has the material and the financial system connected together. But we have a lot of legacy information that came from the previous system that it's still a download that we have, and we are cleaning up right now that. You will note probably the Comptroller General made reference to an allowance, and also the Auditor General made a reference. For the first time, we have been working based on discussion with the auditors last year. Over the past year, we have developed a new process with an allowance to be able at least to come up and evaluate potential of errors that we may have. And just right now, like we have started the first initiative, and we are doing on the ammunition because this is the most important part for us, and where we have many items. The value is $3.5 billion, and we have 17,000 stock items. We are looking at the items by stock items and saying, for example, okay, ammunitions, we have a three-way point, and we try to find like a purchase order to be able to match the price to come back with a proper evaluation that we'll have for the ammunition. So this process right now, by the end of this fiscal year, we'll finish the ammunition, and the plan here is to go and do the consumable items over the next 2 years. But again, I mean, we are talking about $2.5 billion, 400,000 stock items. So it's taking time because we have people working, looking at line by line in the system, but at the same time developing, working with our engineers to try to automate that system. And we are getting there now, at least for ammunition. We have been able to automate that system, so it will check when we enter the price to make sure it's the right price. Because some of the errors we have, like you can have a unit. Mr. Forster made a comment about, like, for example, receiving one item that costs $158 for that item. We receive a box of 100 of them, but the clerk may go and enter in the system $158 for that box. So we have to have that system that can spot that and make the correction. So this is what we are working on right now.
Thank you, Mr. Rochette, and thank you, Ms. Shanahan. We'll now move back to the opposition side and to Mr. McColman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Gentlemen, with regard to the automatic identification technology that you're referring to, the options analysis and definition phase of the project are expected to be completed during 2020 to 21. That's what you presented. When did the options analysis and definition phase begin?
Thank you for the question. There are actually two consecutive phases. So we do the option analysis on all of our major projects to look at just to that. What are the options, how we would proceed. The option analysis for the automatic identification technology started a few years ago. We looked at it at the time, looked at about a kind of $1 billion. We were sent back to go back and look at it to scale it. We will then look to, within a few years, finish the option analysis and then get a decision through the department, potentially through Treasury Board and others who could be involved in this, which would then allow us to enter definition, which would mean request for proposals, tendering, all those sort of things. Again, it is something that we would be, by the government contracting regulations, seeking a competitive process to find a supplier who could help us with this, with the idea...
I'll stop you there, please.
Yep.
How, by the sounds of what you've just described, a multi-year process, to say the least, could be up to 10 years.
It could be...
Start to finish.
It could be from option analysis through definition, implementation, contract award, and delivery, yes.
Do you personally find that an acceptable time frame to implement technology? Do you know what happens to technology over 10 years?
I think the point, yes. Yeah. So, yes.
I'm asking you that question. Do you find that acceptable from a managing point of view?
So, from the context of inception and definition of the problem, we're not selecting technology. We're doing problem definition from a kind of a corporate perspective, if I can call it that. You know, what was the budgetary space? How does this fit? How does this fit in the overall defense budget? Where do we find ourselves? We're years away from identifying the technological solution. So we're not saying we've identified the technological solution today. We want you to deliver that technology in 10 years. We're in, frankly, the problem definition mode. How does it fit, again, with the corporate priorities, et cetera?
Okay, how soon after completion of this phase do you intend to launch a competitive competition for the technology then? How long after?
So once we enter definition, that'll be the time at which we launch a competitive phase, a request for proposal. Depending on the value, this will involve, of course, our colleagues at Public Services Procurement Canada elsewhere, such that we go out to the marketplace to say, you know, what are the solutions?
I know the process.
Okay.
Has an indicative estimate for this procurement been established?
Not an indicative as of yet. So that's as we approach definition, we'll have that from what we would call a rough order magnitude. So looking at scaled options, we've scaled some options anywhere from $300 million to $1.2 billion. Again, rough order magnitude costs as we've talked to different suppliers to get different ideas.
Okay, so is the end state in 2026-27, 10 years from now, defined as full implementation of this technology?
In the context of this, it would be full implementation of that technology, and our intent is to, and though it takes some time, is to have it as a roadmap for continuous improvement. As you indicated, it's a technology that's moving very quickly, from RFIDs to satellites to other things, and we recognize that we have to keep up with it if we want to continue to improve. So part of this solicitation and effort is not just deliver us a solution, you know, we implement it and we're done, but how do we work on it in service for decades after that? For a lot of our complex equipment, it is that continuous technical refresh that becomes key.
Are you aware in your work of vendors, companies, who, say, handle inventory systems for other militaries in the world?
We are aware of some. We also work internationally, so we, Canada, have been one of the leaders in setting up an international partnership consultation around inventory management with our closest allies. We are aware of companies that do it. From an enterprise system, we use SAP is the kind of the underlying system, working very closely with them, as are many of our allies. In a number of areas, we're leading the way as we try to work our way through this from a military supply chain perspective.
You're suggesting by that other militaries, say the US or the UK or wherever you want to say, is in the same circumstances that we are, where the accounting of inventory is totally unsatisfactory at this point in the history of these militaries.
There are other militaries that are having similar struggles that we are, which is, again, not about so much where they have and where it is, but the valuation, the accounting process, etc. It is not something that many militaries had automated a decade ago, and we recognize collectively that this is a new requirement.
Thank you very much, Mr. McColman. We'll now move to Ms. Lapointe. Welcome to our committee, and you have 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'm surprised. Mr. Christopherson tallied everything up, saying that you've been on the committee since 2004 and we're still facing the same problem. Were you a private company and if you had to do your financial statements, you wouldn't be able to obtain a loan to continue receiving money. Luckily, you're a government operation, so you can continue with your work. I'm outside of that, but is it a matter of financial resources? A matter of staff? Because I sit on other committees, and oftentimes the purse strings were tightened in the past, and people were unable to do what they wanted to do. Thank you for the question.
There's a single source. One, sure, it's a question of resources. So for us to...
Ressources humaines, ressources financières.
Human or financial? Both. Both.
In AIT technology, as Pat indicated, the first costs we looked at were over $1 billion. That's a lot of money.
Oui,
and that's money that we would have to take from our capital budget that we use to buy military equipment. Okay? So
Donc, est-ce qu'il y a aussi une réticence au change?
Is there also some reticence vis-à-vis change, technological change? In large corporations, sometimes people are hesitant. Is it a problem because people don't want change? In the beginning, when I talked a little bit about the culture, it's similar to what you described, perhaps at the beginning, at the start. For an organization that was really stuck in military operations and specific tasks, perhaps indeed it was viewed as a secondary task. And one thing I can tell you, and we did mention the changes that we've made, now it is much more recognized amongst colleagues. It's really a priority issue. Human resources, maybe. But to correct the problem, it's on the military side that we're intervening, and we set up a team of specialists, logistics specialists, who are now working full-time on this file. And often, in military activities, there aren't enough people available, but we did bring in more staff. Finance-wise, with regard to the technology we're talking about, it's recognized as a priority. It's recognized that we must move forward. But we have to define the approach and the way of moving forward. The fact that we transferred 640 million parts from one system to another 2 years ago did create a lot of errors. A lot of the information wasn't up to date. So this requires a lot of corrections. I can understand with regard to data entry. As my colleague was saying earlier, there's Great Britain, the U.S. Within NATO, there are other references. There must be specialists who do inventory taking and who know what's going on in the warehouses. I understand that there's a logistics problem. It's the case throughout the world in various warehouses. But I don't think Canada is alone faced with this problem. Within the government, you have Public Works Canada. I can't believe that they're experiencing the same issue. There must be people you could refer to for best practices. Indeed, there are people in Canada, and this is why we said it's what? 82% of the inventory in Canada belongs to us. So within the federal government, Canada-wide, we're really unique because of the value that's involved with our NATO partners. Absolutely, we have a lot of partners who are facing the same problems. And I would say that we share the same approaches. Some changes we have made within our system, with our software, etc., And we did impact upon changes within systems that are used elsewhere by our partners. So we take lessons from them, and we also provide expertise. Is it because every national defense system has different software? Does it vary from place to place? You can't use SAP, as is the case in the private sector? Well, listen, we can to some extent. More and more of our partners use that product. For us, it's a matter of competition often, so we don't precisely choose our supplier. It's the SAP that provides the list of suppliers. There are a lot of countries like the US. Every element of the military has its own software. These are inventories that belong to the Army, the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Air Force, etc. So they do somewhat the same thing. We multiply these systems. I would say that there's more and more cooperation. I would say that there's even an agreement or a perception with regard to military inventories 10 years ago. And that's what we said. This isn't an area where the value of the inventory was a big subject for discussion. The inventory we had was important, but not necessarily its value. And I believe that in all countries, it's more and more important. And I'd say that we're all moving forward together. As a matter of fact, the plan we set up 3 years ago, and I was involved within another position I held at the time, its purpose was to determine how in an international field where there's not much experience, how we might be able to move forward together and improve long-term our approach for inventory keeping. Thank you very much.
We'll go back now to, actually, we just go from one to another. Ms. Mendez is up next.
La surprise, je reviens.
Surprise, surprise, I'm coming back to that again.
On my colleague's line of questions, sometimes, and I do understand when you talk about the $1 billion for the whole technological change that you need to implement eventually, either now or in 5 years' time, it's going to be a massive amount of money, that it's not something that is going to come in cheap. Has this been taken into account by the Defense Department as part of the needs for the department? Is this part of their annual budgeting? Is it something they know or the department knows as a necessity for the changes you need to implement?
Absolutely. I chair the department has a resource management committee that I chair, and the Chief of Defense Staff is on that. And every major financial proposal goes through that committee to be examined, justified, reviewed. And so we have an investment plan laid out over the next 5-10 years. This will be a key part of it. So when they first did the first cut at what was needed at over $1 billion, in terms of doing our due diligence, we said, okay, could you come back and look at, are there cheaper alternative options? Can we phase this in a little bit to spread it out so that we can manage the financial impact? And that's the work that's going on. But that project
is still going on.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
That's not.
Oh, no, absolutely. This is a priority. This is a priority for us.
If I may, Mr. Forster, because I do understand what Mr. Finn was saying about costing not just the acquisition of whatever software or whatever you're going to need, but the technological advances that probably every 6 months you'll have to make, and then the updates and the upgrades that are coming with the speed of technology that we know. So is that part of the $1 million or the $1 billion, or is this going to be more than that?
Well, as they do the project definition work, they will look at what are the likely technological solutions we would use, and that will be part of the project. So whether it's radio chip technology, do we do barcodes, don't forget some of our inventory isn't sitting in a nice Canadian Tire warehouse all in one location. Some of it's on a ship halfway around the world.
I know, I get it. I do understand.
So we need technology that accommodates that.
And I do understand that you also have equipment such as planes and oh my God, no, I can't think of ships or whatever that is not exactly, easy to count or to put a chip on and then, monitor. So that is part of the equation. But it's the the budgeting for this implementation and for this huge change in the in the whole department that I'm asking about. How is this being budgeted? Is it 1 year to the next, and let's see if it how yeah, I'd like a little bit of more clarification on that.
Sure. For every project, major capital project, as I said, it comes to a resource management committee that I chair. The chief financial officer is there. The chief of defense staff is there. So that we will review and approve projects that go into our investment plan. And when we do our budgeting, we include the cost to develop and engineer the project, whether it's infrastructure or a truck or in this case, an IT system. We look at the operating costs of what it's going to take to run it and how do we sustain that. And so we do a life cycle budget. We do budgeting for 50 years.
For 50 years, okay.
Absolutely. When I buy a ship, I need to know how much it's going to cost me to design it, to buy it, and to run it for the next 50 years. And our financial budgeting is unlike anything else in the federal government, because we're taking a 50-year view of what we do. So the decision we're making today, we got to pay for 50 years from now. But in this case, when an IT system comes forward, it will come to that resource committee that I chair. We will look at the costs, both to design it, develop it, acquire it, and operate it, and that will go into our budget.
Okay.
In this case, the first cut at it was over $1 billion. I think it's a reasonable thing for us to say, okay, can we send you back to do some more thinking? Is there a way we can phase this? Are there cheaper alternative options? Because that comes at, we only have one capital budget. It's the same budget that we're using to buy trucks for the Army that we're using to do this system. So we have to manage those priorities too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do we have any time left? Your time is up,
no? Okay.
Ms. Mendez, but we can come back. We'll now move to Monsieur Gaudin for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a precise question to put to you. Might you confirm to us here on the committee that the legacy infantry, I'm coming back to that, we talked earlier about the future infantry, the present one, and the legacy infantry, and I think that the problem relates more to the legacy infantry, which is difficult to calculate. You'll correct me if I'm mistaken. Might you tell the committee today when the infantry, the legacy infantry, the items purchased in the past when there was no infantry system in place or adequate systems compared with today's systems, when are you going to be able to tell us that the legacy infantry will be complete? Complete in which context? In the context of its value, etc., its valuation? Well, that's what we're doing at the same time. At the same time as we do the audit of the infantry, we determine to what extent there might be parts, infantry items that are no longer useful in order to eliminate them, to dispose of them. And this is a complex process as well, as I was explaining earlier. In some cases, these are parts that we purchased through an American process, etc. So this is ongoing. As I said earlier, we're looking at about $1 billion per year. So we still have work for a few more years. And the legacy infantry, in some cases, if I look, for example, at airplanes, the Sea Kings, helicopters, on the ships that have been in service for more than 50 years now. Excuse me, Mr. Finn, I don't have much time. Could you tell us what the situation is for the legacy infantry? Are there categories that you'll never be able to tally up? You won't be able to do it in 10, 20, 30 years' time any better than today. We're talking about 23 years' time. We're talking about 2003, and this will be concluded in 2026, so it's 23 years. The time frame. When are you going to be able to draw a line to stop talking about the past and look to the future? Are you able to tell me in your plan when it's going to be definitive? Between now and 2020, our plan is to complete the great majority, I would say, of this work. I'm not in a position to say that at some point in time we'll be 100% sure of our past infantry, our legacy infantry. But our aim is to reduce issues, especially value-wise, And you must understand that the percentage of our inventory that represents the majority of the value is quite limited. So there will come a time when perhaps a very limited inventory won't have been resolved. There might be a few errors remaining for that. But based on our plan, between 3 and 4 years' time, we should have completed everything. 3 or 4 years? Okay, with the experience we have on the part of your department, we'll say 4 years. Now, I have information here. It says that you're already eliminating items that are no longer useful. 29%, 887 items have been removed from the inventory out of a lot of 1.6 million. You're going for it progressively. But for the 1.6 million, you're saying that that's been set aside, but that there are a lot more items. I don't care about the value. We have to know what we have. And at one point, you'll make an accounting decision and say, well, we can't assess this. We can't evaluate its worth. So we're starting up with a new system, and we'll build on that and forget about the legacy. Is that the plan you have in mind? Indeed. But I would say that one of the reasons we're here discussing this is that the value in the context of the government's accounting system is very important. But if what we have, we can't evaluate it, what does it matter? We have to evaluate what we need. But that's where the Auditor General came into play. What do we have and where is it? We've made a lot of progress in this area. Yes, but I'm not happy with progress. I want perfection. That's my aim. I think Canada has systems, has the intellectual capability to be up to date and control its inventory. And I think that we should be an example. Thank you.
Oui, je voulais juste mentionner qu'en fait, on a un plan.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that we do have a plan. During the last stage, we were looking at our legacy inventory, and we have a plan for 2019. That's our aim, to conclude this work. This year, we want to finish up the review of our inventory for munitions, and then we'll look at the rest of the inventory over the next 2 years. You're right. We'll never have a price for everything, but we're working with our colleagues, the auditors, to determine what kind of reserve we will set aside for those items for which we don't have a precise cost. Thank you. There's hope then.
We'll come back to Mr. Chen and to Ms. Shanahan.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question.
A lot of the costs involved, for example, the $1 billion that we need for the new IT system, the inventory system, but there's also a tremendous cost to doing nothing. And these costs are both financial and non-financial. For example, when we look at the inventory itself, we need inventory to support inventory. You need to put these out-of-date materials in boxes or shelves. You need capital cost, warehouses and storage areas to house them, but also over-purchasing. If you don't know that you have an extra helicopter propeller somewhere in BC, well, you might just order a new one and then buy it again for no particular reason other than not knowing what you have. But there's also an unmeasured cost, and that is where it really bothers me, because if that helicopter doesn't get that new propeller, then that helicopter stays on the ground, and then our people are not able to do the work that they're set out to do. Mr. Christofferson talked about NATO and talked about how Canada is appreciated. I heard from the U.S. President when he came and spoke to our Parliament that we need more of Canada in the world. And so to me, our Canadian Armed Forces are truly amazing. They're just brilliant, amazing people that have dedicated themselves. I want to know, has your department, other than looking at the cost of implementing the changes that we need, have you actually articulated the costs that are involved in doing nothing? How much does it cost, for example, to house all this inventory, particularly the inventory that we may not need?
Okay, thank you for the question. I guess I would answer 2 ways. We, and the Auditor General agrees, have made a lot of progress and have a reasonably good handle on quantity. So it's not a question of a military operation overseas not being able to get parts. That is our first and primordial priority, and it has to be. What I would suggest is what we're looking at is, yes, there's a cost of maintaining outdated, non-useful inventory. I got to heat it, I got to secure it, I got to store it. And we're going through that every year to get rid of that and accelerating that process. But let's be clear in terms of the materiel group. Their business is to forecast what the military needs are and to make sure the parts are there. And I think the AG has said, you're doing pretty well on quantity. Where we are having trouble with is the value to put on that information. So it's not a question of us doing nothing. I don't think anybody's sitting here saying we've done nothing or are doing nothing. We're trying to do as much as we can, as fast as we can, because we do think it's important. And I don't want to be paying to heat and secure and store material I don't need to, because I could use that money somewhere else. So we're trying to get rid of it and go through it. You have 600 million pieces of inventory. You need to kind of do it as fast as you can, but in stages, and that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. We'll go to Ms. Shanahan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to come back to, again, some of the themes that we've been following with the Auditor General. And one thing that we have talked about here at the committee over a number of government departments and agencies is the problem of data management, is the problem of adequately ensuring that data input is accurate and that it's managed properly, and that we're able to get the kind of reports and information that we need from collecting that data. So you mentioned in your remarks that you have the integrated system of record, the DRMIS, and I'm sure you know the breakout better than I do. Please talk to us about how how it is working now, to what percentages has it been implemented, what are some of the checks and balances that you have in place to make sure that it is the system that's going to take us through the next 10, 15, 20, 50 years.
Sorry, thank you for the question. The Defense Resource Management Information System is what you're talking about. When we describe the kind of the convergence of all of these systems that we had, that's what we're talking about. And if you go back a decade ago, we even had two separate instances of SAP. We had a material acquisition and support information system and a financial management system, both SAP-based in different versions that kind of sort of talk to each other. We had another system for material and inventory. We had another system for people, and a plethora of systems underneath that, not at the enterprise level with all of the suppliers. Through our colleagues in information management, we've really had an information management roadmap to pull this all into creating a true enterprise system, as they would call it, I think, in the commercial context, such that we have one system of record that now does all of this. And that is the piece that, again, we underestimated the time to get to the full amalgamation. We fully brought it all together in, I think it was December 13, early 14. And of course, in transferring all the data, had a year and a half of data cleanup to do. We are now there. We are doing much more business analytics using it. Mr. Chen asked about some of the work that we're doing around overbuys. We've created resource planning tools that we actually track buys and overbuys and buys against dormant stocks and a whole bunch of things that we can now do to have this sort of one system in place. We are using it much more from business analytics, as I mentioned, and decision making. So it is there. It is our system of record financially as well. It is the system that I use in kind of the project management, in the material, in the inventory. It is coming together, and that's where I talk about we're probably world leaders when we talk to SAP about how we're now using this from a military enterprise perspective. So that is now there, and we need to continue to grow it, and we recognize it. But the thing about the complexity of the system that we brought together is it is highly complex, and now as we get into it and make changes, you know, how we use the fields around inventory. For aircraft, for example, the manufacturing part number is so important, whereas for other equipment, a NATO stock number is the key piece. And so we wind up with kind of conflicts and issues and processes and issues that we're dealing with to make sure, as I said earlier on, that we are transforming. But DREAMIS is an incredibly important enabler, and it is in fact an operational system. Aircraft do not fly unless they're actually recorded as green in DREAMIS, because that's the indication that all their maintenance has been done. It is an absolutely key enabler for us.
Thank you very much. I just got a couple of questions, and I'm going to turn it to Mr. Christopherson. But I guess my first question is, you've talked about one system of inventory. That's one system. It's not one system for the Army, one system for the Navy, one system for the Air Force. It's one overarching system. Is there other subsystems where the Navy or the Air Force have their own inventory for a quick access, or does it go back to this one big, humongous system?
So the system I'm talking about, of course, is the information system. It is one system for our department. I think I mentioned early on about some of our allies will have different systems in Army, Navy, Air Force. We do not. And we track that inventory wherever it is. It brings a complexity. So do the Army, Navy, Air Force have access to inventory on bases and wings and at sea? Yes, they do. But the system under which it's tracked is our Defense Resource Management Information System.
Are you sure that is I mean, it always sounds good, and in business, it's good to have one system. But is that part of the problem? Like, would it be easier to have a silo system for the different arms of our Canadian Armed Forces?
I don't think so. We buy most of the inventory centrally. So from an acquisition perspective, it is my organization that buys the vast majority of the spare parts for equipment. There's other, I would say, material that's bought locally in bases and wings, but when it comes to military operations, equipment, spare parts, it's my organization that does all of that.
So is there a lot of information changing with our allies? So I remember that when we were involved in the mission in Libya, one of the key things was that, you know, I mean, our Air Force is there, other Air Forces can be consistent, we can use their mechanics, they can use, is there sharing of information in theater, or sharing of information with Australia or Britain in regards to accessing their inventory and them accessing our inventory?
There is absolutely. In fact, within our system, what we talk about stock codes are NATO stock numbers. So across all of NATO, for example, we use a common approach, common fields for stock. We have multinational and bilateral agreements, mutual logistics support arrangement is what we call them. We have systems, and again, in my career at sea, we routinely would work with allies. I would say the U.S. by virtue of the type of equipment, but many times at sea through the binational, international agreements where we had common equipment. I've accessed spare parts and things through our allies. So we do that. When I talk about the system, at this point I'm talking about, if you will, the software or the enterprise system. So we do that, but we have to be very careful about that as well in the context of data refresh. Where is it? What's going on? A lot of it we do satellite-based, so we'll have what we call a deployed instance of our Defense Resource Management Information System. But interestingly, we have to be careful that we don't put it on a ship that actually goes MCON silent, we would call it, turns off all the emissions, but the logistics system is actually saying, like, here I am. Or we have RFID on weapons that actually others can detect. So we have an operational dynamic to it, but we absolutely cooperate internationally.
Yeah, good. So I mean, I think that's important, and I realize again that's quantity. That's quantity, not the valuation of what that inventory is, and that's really what we have to focus in on. I do note we just pulled up the National Audit Office of Great Britain. Some of the committee will be going there in the next few weeks. Speaking with their Public Accounts Committee. But on their National Audit Office, they have a Defense and Armed Forces page. And one of the things says the Ministry of Defense is buying more inventory than it uses and not consistently disposing of it if it's no longer needed, using money that could be spent elsewhere. He goes on and says, in the current economic climate where the department is striving to make savings, it can ill afford to use resources to buy and hold necessary levels of stock, and it clearly does so. The root cause of excess stock, which the department is seeking to address, is that management and accountability structures currently fail to provide the incentives for cost-effective inventory management. And that becomes the problem. When we're trying to deal with taxpayers' dollars and the valuation of some of this inventory becomes a problem, not just for Canada, but for our allied countries and probably for most countries in the world. So it goes on in there and it lists some of the very concerns that Mr. Chen has brought forward and Mr. Godin, Mr. McColman have brought forward. So it is, we get it. It is a problem around the world. But you have today come and you've thrown out a offer, I guess, to be more accountable to this committee because we're called upon to do our job as well. And you know, I'd be interested in hearing ways that you know, we can do that. And maybe I'll turn to Mr. Christofferson for a few ideas. He's kind of our idea guy. Mr. Christofferson.
Well, thank you, Chair, and appreciate you underscoring the importance of the issues. I just want to say I know this has not been a fun or comfortable meeting for you. It wasn't meant to be. But I also want you to know that it's not our goal to have these kind of meetings. We are happiest when there are audit reports that show how everybody's complying with everything and taxpayer money is being spent exactly the way it should be. That's our goal. So where things are not complying, our goal is to change behavior so that the behavior is in compliance and Canadians can know that their hard-earned tax dollars are being spent properly and being accounted for properly. That's our ultimate goal. It's not necessarily to bring in senior people and make their life difficult, although as you can see, if you're not complying with the rules the way you should, that's what's going to happen. So in a goal now to move forward, sort of we've dealt with where we are and why we're here. Now let's look at going forward and getting things back on track, get into a positive world. So with that, Chair, I'd like to suggest that we ask the department to provide the following pieces of information. One, that the Department of National Defence provide the committee with a report explaining how each of the milestones of the 2013 action plan were either met or not met. Two, also provide the committee with detailed reasons for which any of the, well, it's most of them, for which the deadlines of the 2013 plan were extended into the future. Third, provide a clearer explanation of the terms used and make the two charts comparable for proper comparison. And that's, Deputy, taking up on your offer directly, sir. And then lastly, provide the committee with a further report regarding how well military inventory is managed in comparison to Canada by the following Canadian allies. 1, the United States, 2, United Kingdom, and 3, Australia. And I put that last one in, gentlemen, because to be fair, if we are facing similar challenges to, for instance, those 3 allies, then that does give us at least some tempering of knowing that this is not just screw-ups, this is a tough new way of accounting, and that everybody's kind of in the same boat. By the same token, if they've got some methods that are working better than ours, then we would hope that your report would reflect that and make maybe some suggestions about how we might better account for our spending. But this is really meant to put things in proper context, because I took you again at your word when you said, you know, everybody's struggling with this. Fair enough. Show us. Show us that this is not unique to Canada, and that'll provide you with a little more compassion, shall I say, for lack of a better word, from us as we go forward. So, Chair, I think if you seek it from colleagues, you'll find that there's support for these 4 measures. And I just want to emphasize again how much we appreciate you coming in. These are difficult matters, but when I spoke to you of the pride that I felt as a Canadian delegate to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, that professionalism also includes not only what we do in the theatre, but how well we account for the taxpayer money that pays for those things. And I appreciate that you understand that. I appreciate you came here with an intent to answer our questions. And I believe that ultimately, collectively, we will get this in hand. It's just going to take us a little bit to get there. And the last thing I would say is I really, really hope that the report that we receive is sufficient that we don't need to have you come back in. Because if that's the case, this meeting will probably look like the fun one. So again, a positive note. I think you understand our concerns. I will be shocked if that report doesn't address our concerns, is very, very honest in its evaluation, even if it has to be a little self-critical. Now's the time to get back out in front. I have every faith that you'll provide us with the kind of reports that allow all of us to feel good about moving forward and hit the goals that our Auditor General has set for all of us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christofferson. I want to watch what I say here, but I noticed that in your recommendations and in your action plan there that you didn't include a date. For them to get back to us. And I think we want a fair date. I mean, we certainly don't want it extended.
Don't change it.
Yeah, right. You know, what is a fair timeline on some of these, Mr. Forster?
Forever. We want one report.
Yeah, and we aren't talking, you know, we aren't talking a report that will solve and cure insomnia, you know, for weeks. We're talking something that's going to be very, you know, succinct and lay out, you know, just whatever length. But yeah, to be fair.
To be fair, Chair, you know what? If you take a look at our schedule and what's coming with the holidays and everything, I mean, if we gave them until sometime early into the new year, I'm fine. This is a big job. I don't want a one-pager, quite frankly.
No.
I want a good, detailed explanation. And if there's mea culpas in there, they take time to wordsmith too. So I'm looking more a matter of when early in the new year do you think is fair to give us a comprehensive response on these 4 areas?
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting a one-pager with a couple sentences on each thing. I also realize that the wheels of departments seem to churn very slowly. And so I want to be fair to them as well. I want to be fair to them.
All that, what would you suggest to us as a fair timeline for you to get back to us with a comprehensive report as we've asked for?
Well, the House will adjourn and you'll be back, what, end of January kind of time frame? So we'll be happy to provide it, but when you're back after the holidays.
That's more than fair.
End of January, fair?
Yeah.
Fair? Okay, colleagues, end of January?
Are we good with that?
Yeah. That works.
All right, so that's a consensus on that. Thank you very much. And I mean it.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
go
can
ahead,
I just
Mr.
say,
Forster.
you know, I appreciate and we'll be happy to provide that. We share the same goal on accountability. I'm happy to come here and be accountable, and I am responsible for the whole department and the stuff that's gone on before me. And we share the same goal. I don't want to be wasting money on parts I don't need either. I got lots of demands to fill, and if I can free up resources in managing our inventory better, boy, that's near the top of my list. So, and we'll be happy to provide an explanation of where we were in the early plan, what changed, why it changed, and we have no problem saying.
Can I just emphasize again? Look, I mean, if there's been a screw up or two, or something wasn't as as it should be, please say so, because it'll save us all a lot of effort. The sort of harsh part of this, I hope, is over, and if we get a report that clearly tells us that you've given us a forthright answer to all the questions and satisfied the concerns we have, Chair, my hope is that's the end of it, and then we'll continue to see the kind of progress that we all want. That's our goal. I think the deputy's saying the same thing. I'm feeling fairly optimistic, Chair, that we're going to get that. It's now in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for attending today, and we'll look forward to that report. And thank you very much. And so we're going to suspend for about 5 minutes, and we're going to allow our visitors to take their exit and our witnesses. We're going to come back for about 5 minutes just on a committee business, an item of committee business. And we'll be in camera at that point. So please don't leave.
you.